Jupyter Notebooks is a useful tool for Python to experiment with code. So to install Jupyter Notebooks, you can go to Jupyter with a Y .org and then navigate to Jupyter Read the Docs IO, and there's install instructions. And what we're going to look at here is installing classic Jupyter Notebooks. There's a Jupyter Lab, which is a little different, but we're going to install the classic Jupyter Notebook interface. So you need Python, and we're going to assume that Python 3 is already installed or some version of it. And there's a number of instructions here. You can install Anaconda and do all this, but we're just going to do pip install Jupyter here. And actually, this is a good idea, is first doing the pip3 install. So we'll go to open up a command prompt, and we'll pip install upgrade. We'll do pip3 install upgrade pip, and this is going to upgrade pip to the latest version. Once you do that, we will pip install Jupyter, and this will should install Jupyter Notebooks. And that should complete the basic installing of installing Jupyter Notebooks. Now, once we have that, we're going to work with this inside of Visual Studio Code. And I have a folder here for where I'm doing Chapter 2 demos. I'm going to open with code here in this folder. And inside of this folder, and so there's a couple different ways of starting a Jupyter Notebook application. And for Visual Studio Code, there is some documentation here for using Jupyter Notebooks. And let's see. So the best guide is this one, Docs Data Science Jupyter Notebooks. And it talks about setting up your environment. So we're going to, so there's actually a package that you can install for Visual Studio Code. Well, actually, this is what we just did, pip install Jupyter, so that's already done. And then once we have that done, we can install there's a extension. If we type in Jupyter, and Jupyter has a Y in it, there's this Jupyter Notebook Support extension. So we're going to install that in Visual Studio Code, and it gives us some things to make it easier to work with Jupyter Notebooks. So once this is installed, And just the way you find it, just type Jupyter and it's the first one. Then what we can do is go back to our program. And then the easiest way to create one is actually, you can either do Control-Shift-P, which brings up this command interface, and you can type Jupyter : and then find create new blank notebook. That's one way of doing it. And this will create basically an untitled, unsaved version, and then you can try to save it in the folder that you have. But the easiest way really is just right in here. Make a file, any file name you want, IPYNB, which is the Jupyter Notebook file extension. And once you do that, you have a Jupyter Notebook. Now, what can we do with this once we have it? Well, basically, Jupyter Notebooks are a combination of code and Markdown. So you wouldn't use this maybe to make a program that you're going to give to a customer directly, or you're going to make for use for regular use necessarily. But it's great for a research environment and for the lab environment where you're just experimenting with things and you want to intersperse code with some notes. So, for example, this is a code block. I can just write Python code in here. And all the code blocks are really just like one big Python program. And once I do that, I can hit this run button. And it'll ask me what environment I want to run it in, and it'll identify all the ones on your computer. I'm just going to grab the first one. And what we can see is it says hello world, and it ran the program. It even tells us how much time it took. And so then, we can add a markdown section, and here we're just typing text. So, this is an example of making a print statement. And if you look in the Jupyter documentation, it'll tell you all things. I think you can put formulas and do all sorts of other things. And you can move these things around. So really, I probably want this to be after that. So I have some explanation of what I'm doing, then I have a little piece of code, and you could just keep alternating Markdown and code. So it's almost like just having super capable commenting ability for a program, but it really is a combination of marking up and code kind of mixed together, and that you can use this to kind of develop your algorithms and your methodologies on how you're going to write code. And that's what we'll use it in a course, is as a way to just kind of learn how to get the code to work and learn how certain algorithms work before you do something more complex. So a very useful tool, and and just to show you that the code is kind of all one block, now load a variable or declare a variable. And then maybe I will add another code block, and I'll say x is equal to 25. And then I'll add another markdown block, and then here I'll say now print it. And then I'll add another code block, and I'll say print x. And you can actually run it. You can either run these one at a time, but you can see if I do this code, x actually, this block actually was able to execute x before that. I can also clear all the outputs. Let's see what happens if I run this by itself. It still works because this is ahead of it. So maybe I do a restart. That might actually get it completely restarted. Yeah. So now, if I just run this without running this piece of code, it still tells me x isn't defined because this didn't run first. And so just realize that you have to execute everything in order. Let me do another restart and clear outputs. And you can actually run all, and I think they all get run sequentially, and then you can see that they all execute. So kind of a neat tool, and that's how you install and use Jupyter notebooks with Visual Studio Code. Thank you.